Chapter 26. I don't see why you reporters keep confusing Brooks Robinson and me. Can't you see that we wear different numbers? Frank Robinson, outfielder, Baltimore Orioles. Oh my golly, Uncle Jim Bob, what are you doing here so soon? Finesse fell into Dr. Dan Devers's enormous embrace. Your stage doesn't fit the schoolhouse, boomed Dr. Dan. I've come to supervise and to partake of a much-needed vacation. He took Finesse by the shoulders, lifted her off her feet, and kissed her right in the middle of the forehead. I see your pageant is morphing into a very interesting amalgamation. Finesse began a real boo-hoo that could be heard all up and down Main Street. Dr. Dan ushered her inside the barber shop, and House followed them. I'd better get everybody, said Melba. Don't say anything important until I get back. She ran toward the ball field with her clipboard in her hands. The ball players and the rest of the pageant players practically ran over Melba Jane as they raced past her in the opposite direction and flooded into the barber shop. Melba got herself turned back around and joined them. Pip was not there, but his second in command, Mr. Lamar Lackey, stopped his scissors in mid-clip so he could figure out the commotion. Hampton Halls was startled awake from where he was snorting in his barber chair, waiting for another customer. Amid the smells of shaving lotion and the sounds of Finesse's sobs, the whole story was related. Word had gotten round that Dr. Dan Devers had been spotted at Schultz's barber shop, and a crowd began gathering from as far away as Raleigh. Even some redbugs were there with their mammas, all sardined into the barber shop or spilling onto the sidewalk, listening to the saga and sneaking a peek at Dr. Dan. It's the best combination of artistic vision and athletic prowess I've ever heard, said Dr. Dan, or Jim Bob, casting an admiring look in House's direction. I salute you, young House. How did you come up with such a brilliant solution to our dilemma? House opened his mouth, shut it, and shrugged. He waited for some kid to tell on him, to tell the whole town that he had been helping Norwood Boyd cook kids, that he was nothing more than a monster himself. But, of course, no kid would say that in front of grown-up. No one uttered a peep except for Dr. Dan, who seemed to delight in his own oratory. I am a baseball fan of the highest order, he boomed. Baseball is an art, a drama, a ballet without music. Let us give it a Greek chorus. Everyone in the barber shop smiled. Good manner smiles and wondered what the heck that meant. Dr. Dan was happy to explain. It's a brilliant solution to combine the game and the pageant, yes, but it will never work unless we go all out. I have learned that when one is presented with an opportunity to become more than oneself, one always takes that opportunity gratefully. One acknowledges all offers of assistance and embraces the larger field, so to speak, of possibility. Let's do it. Let's plan and practice the pageant and the ball game together. We can move part of the stage to the empty lot temporarily as well. It won't fit in the schoolhouse right now, so we'll make good use of it on the field. Voila! A problem turned into a possibility. Voila! Finesse beamed. Her uncle was the most handsome, most dashing, most capable man she had ever met. He had coffee bean skin and glowed right along with his smile, and a bushy mustache that was tinged with gray. He smelled like oranges. His enthusiasm was infectious. A lot of people are going to think we are a shocking pair, said Dr. Dan. But baseball lends itself perfectly to pageantry. This is just what we need, a little drama, a bit of a shake-up in our routines. Is there anyone here from Smith County? Several Smith County mamas raised their hands. Will you take this proposal back to your ball players and make sure we have their complete cooperation? They nodded their heads, glancing sideways at one another, their smiles intact. Who will step up to the plate to assist us? Asked Dr. Dan. Inspired, people fell all over themselves in their desire to help. I'll mow the ball field and the empty lot, chimed old Johnny Mercer, who dug the graves at the Snapfinger Cemetery for Snowburger's funeral home empire. We'll move the stage, volunteered Woodrow Pete Wilson and several of the papas who were thrilled there was going to be a game. I'll starch and press the uniforms, said Mary Wilson. She stood at the back of the crowd with Leonard Jackson. My machine's back in business, and so am I. Sunshine Laundry sent us your sheets under new management. We can't be beat. Where's Klebo? Klebo had not arrived with the other kids. He quit, cried Ned and Boone. We'll just see about that, said Mary Wilson. Make way. She stomped out of the barber shop. Where's Honey? Asked Leonard Jackson. She went home with Ruby, said Evan Evans. Mary Wilson peered her way back into the barber shop, leading Klebo by the ear. Coming through, she said as she snaked toward Finesse and house. Steam rose from her like she was a pressing machine herself. The look on Klebo's face was a mixture of pain and fury. This boy will play, Mary Wilson stated in a menacing voice. He will dance, he will sing. She stopped herself, and as Dr. Dan stood tall right in front of her, her eyes traveled up and up until they reached Dr. Dan's eyes. Then her face softened, and her voice took on an immediate sweetness. Have you met my son, Klebo? Klebo H.W. Wilson. She let go of Klebo's ear, dusted him off, straightened his t-shirt, and shoved him in front of Dr. Dan. Klebo looked like a mute, deranged dog. Dr. Dan stuck out his enormous hand and shook Klebo's smaller one. Good to meet such an upstanding, cooperative young man. Klebo blinked into Dr. Dan's dark eyes. Yes, sir, he mumbled. He cast a sideways look at House, who looked away. And you all know my niece, Frances. Dr. Dan hoisted Finesse onto a barber chair, the very same barber chair she collided with during her interpretive dance when House's elbow was broken. She balanced herself daintily, standing on the seat of the chair, and gave a small bow. Finesse, s'il vous plaît, she sang. My name is now Finesse. I believe that's the name of a shampoo, whispered Lamar Lackey, still holding his scissors. Finesse has more talent in her little finger than I have in my entire body, Dr. Dan orated. Miss Mattie appeared at the edge of the crowd. How much talent does it take to lie in bed in a coma on television for the past month? But she smiled when she said it. She liked Dr. Dan. She had missed him. Everybody had. Dr. Dan gave Miss Mattie a bear hug. It takes great talent to figure out how to get out of work long enough for a good vacation, Mattie, he boomed. So here I am. Coma and all. Well, it's about time, said a voice from the door out of the shop. Like the Red Sea parting, a path was opened, and through it walked Pip. James, he said to his grown grandson. Jim Bob, the famous soap opera actor Dr. Dan Devers. Poppy, said Dr. Dan, tears in his eyes, at the sight of his grandfather. I'm home. The Aurora County News, regular edition, June 19th. Murmurs from Mabel, by Phoebe Scoop Tolbert. As my faithful readers now know, I have sworn to deliver their local news just as soon as it breaks all over Aurora County. Somehow, even with my reporting skills at their prime, I was scooped. The death of Mr. Norwood Boyd was reported in this paper by Comfort Snowburger of Snowburger's Funeral Home. One can perhaps forgive the funeral home for wanting to be the first to report this major event, but I would just like to point out that the protocols and etiquettes of the newspaper business call for fair reportage to all sources as soon as a story is leaked. Please put me back in the loop, Snowburgers. On to Mr. Norwood Boyd, who, as readers now know, died this past week at the ripe old age of 88. Not that old. Mr. Tolbert is approaching that age himself. He remembers going to school with Norwood, but of course I don't, as I am much younger than Mr. Tolbert. Norwood had a long and industrious career in the U.S. Merchant Marines. He started his life in Mabel, at a time when there were no telephones or toilets in every home. He was known, even as a child, for being a principled person, a man who stood for what he believed in, sometimes at great cost to himself. He was a shining example to all. One thing Norwood believed in was people. He brought people together, even after his illness forced him indoors when he could no longer be active. His correspondence was the stuff of legend. Dot Land has had to order an extra mail crate to hold all the mail that has arrived for Norwood just since his death. He was in touch with people from all walks of life, from all his travels, and he championed the human spirit. Now, there are those who would say Norwood was recluse. He was. There were rumors of a long-lost love. Who knows? What is true is that Norwood Boyd gave himself permission to stay home for the rest of his life. That was his right. He leaves behind no immediate family, although he is survived by dear friend Parting Schultz and his granddaughter Gladys Knight Schultz, and her daughter Frances Ballard Schultz. He was preceded in death by dear friend Joseph Jefferson Jackson of Greenville, South Carolina, and Joe's great-grandniece Elizabeth Jackson, maiden and married name of Mabel, who was also Norwood's goddaughter. As was reported by Snowburgers, there will be no funeral. However, in related news, rumor has it that the Aurora County All-Stars will play on July 4th. Those of you old enough to remember Norwood as the boy will understand that there could be no more appropriate memorial to Norwood Boyd than a baseball game. Play ball!